Whenever, whenever I would think my dad is gonna discipline me, I thought I'm gonna die because I've never seen him in that disciplinary. I'm gonna.
The more I speak about my dad and our experience, I'm realizing that I think part of what is manhood and how I'm supposed to be carrying myself as a man is not to unnecessarily speak ill of my dad, even though our relationship is nowhere.
When you define yourself by what you're not supposed to be, like you tend to, the low standard becomes an elevated standard, and there's no room for growing and being better because you have to always be a better husband.
1, 2, 3, 4.
What's good, beautiful people? Welcome to 2.5 Husbands, where we celebrate becoming better husbands.
It's 2.5, even though there are 3 husbands, and that's because at some point, one of us, if not all of us, was not fully the husband that we were supposed to be.
And that's why we actually come here on a weekly basis to discuss some of the issues that we face, some of the issues we are seeing around us, and we hope that the journey that we started with you and for you is going to benefit you,
and yours.
All right. Buffets, keep on, my gents.
away.
Yeah. We will replace one Tswana with another Tswana.
It's the wisest thing you've ever done.
Is it?
This podcast,
Yeah. I realized maybe that makes us, me and Simba, a half-husband combined.
Why?
So
I mean, we saw that the first one didn't work.
Okay.
It's a joke.
All right.
or you upgraded
Maybe.
the system.
Maybe.
Yeah, one has a beard, one doesn't.
Is he even a husband? I mean,
Yeah, he needs to get a beard. You know what they say about husbands with beards? If you shave it, then you'll realize we don't have a chin because the day you got married, you've been like this.
Yeah.
you're out of order.
Yeah, man. What did I do here?
Those are not my sentiments.
Yeah.
Anyway, Buffett. Gents,
I like your bow tie.
thanks.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Eh? Can you make it?
It's like, I think so. Let's deconstruct it.
It's words we don't use on this podcast, please.
Deconstruct. We need to deconstruct.
Husbandry.
So we chatting about fatherhood essentially.
Yeah.
Was Youth Day not long ago, last week, Father's Day on Sunday, and just as youths who are married, some of us who are fathers, there's a lot to think about. Yeah, what those roles are, how we play them, but I think importantly how those who came before us have shaped us. And as we sit around this table, we all have different stories of fatherhood and how our fathers have shaped the men that we've become, presently or absently.
Tissues.
Yeah, I don't know, my man. We'll use one of these books.
Yeah.
But I think whether we are aware of it or not, our fathers, whether they were present or not, have shaped some of the decisions that we made as we became men and actively took those roles. There's somebody who said, speaking about a coach, right, that if you're a coach, whatever happens with your team at the end of the game, either you've coached a play or you let it happen. Right?
Sure.
And coaches who coach are actively taking their role and thinking decisively and stepping into the role that they've assumed.
So just go back at that. I didn't get it.
You either, however the game turns out, whatever plays you've made, you either coach those plays, so you've actively said to your players, because of how the other team is playing, this is how we're going to play, right? So you're actively coaching that thing, whether it's you going on a defense or you're going on offense, right? But other coaches just sit back and let the game happen. And so you lost because you either coached it or you let it happen. Or you won because you've coached it
Yeah.
or maybe in your favor. It just happened and you won, right? But any coach knows, man, you don't want to win a thing just because it just happened, right? And so the reason why I even bring that up is whether some of our fathers were coaching or they just let it happen, their sons become the men that become because of either that coaching or their fathers just let the sons happen to
But
the
they were
world,
not
right?
even at the game.
They weren't even at the game, my dog, right?
Because letting it happen implies
Yeah,
you can be
like
on the
you are
sidelines,
there, yeah.
but you don't
watching.
really-
Yeah. But even not being at the game, you let it happen. So
Yeah.
if your son now is a menace to society, you let it happen. He was your responsibility, right? And you should have been actively shepherding him, discipling him, coaching him to become the man that you would want to be, right? I would even argue and say, even if you coached him to be a rubbish person. But I think as a father, you need to be actively coaching. This is your responsibility. You brought this boy into the world. So,
Or girl.
Oh, girl, yes, hundreds. So anyway, that's just to set this thing up a bit too. I think, maybe just a bit of our stories. What relationship do we have with our fathers now?
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll kick us off. Relationship with my father, I think, pretty good. Shout out to you, sir.
Does he watch the podcast?
Here and there. I don't actually. I should ask him.
Yes.
I would
assume your dad
We
watches.
talked about it.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
talked about it when we were actually kicking it off. I was like, "Hey man, what you think?" And he gave me his views, which was dope. I'll actually ask him. Yeah, that's a good one. But very good relationship. I think super present. We do a lot of things together. Obviously, we're in different countries and whatnot, but catch up, always have conversations. In many ways, one of my mentors, I think. He's gone places that I would one day want to go. And so whenever I've got any questions, particularly around whether it's career, whether it's around being a husband, just being a man in society, I'm like, hey man, you've been here longer than me. What are your thoughts? So I think a very good relationship, and I think not only based on the conversations I think that we've had, I think was very fortunate growing up to have had the experience, the familial experiences that we've had. And I think that's been dope because I've been able to be vulnerable and open and honest with him about certain things which, when he was raising me, him and my mother, of course, I wasn't supposed to do. But then I come out and I say, I've done them. And of course, I thought I was going to die, but turns out I stayed alive. So yeah, it's a good relationship. Also beyond that, I think seeing him not only father me, father my brothers, not only seeing him being active, I think, in terms of being a father, but many ways demonstrating how you love your wife as well.
Yeah.
So that, I think, has been a positive experience and vision and view of, okay, this is how this thing works.
Yeah.
And actually, I was thinking about it. He also comes from a rich heritage of prison fathers.
Wow.
So his father still alive today, my grandfather. I think I shared some of the advice he gave us.
A man with the bars, bro.
No, he's got bars. And then even on my mother's side, also present father on her side. So I think generally the picture of fatherhood is one way I'm like, oh, okay, cool. Grandfather, still together. Okay, cool. My father's side, still together. Okay, cool. Then my parents themselves, I think I've seen this intimate relationship demonstrated in a positive light in front of me. Yeah.
Did you see the difference between like how your dad raised you versus how he raised your brothers? Because you said you experienced them raising you, and then
Yeah. So I
brothers.
think it's interesting, right? Because the gap between myself and my brothers, at least so I'm the firstborn, the one after me. He's 10 years younger than me, right?
Sheesh.
So
There's
many
hope.
ways,
There's hope for Zaya. Okay.
Yeah.
You need another child. That's another episode.
My parents waited for 9 years. Yours waited for 10. There's hope.
Yeah. So the gap and distance between us meant when my younger brother was born, I would have been in grade 5. Right? So, obviously, this is me now seeing how you handle a crying child.
Yeah.
What that means in terms of supporting mom, all of those kind of things. It was very interesting because a lot of things are happening at the same time. I can't remember if he was schooling at that time as well. I think he was doing his MBA and working.
That's your
and
dad?
Then, that's my dad, yeah.
Yo.
So I was just like, obviously it didn't register in grade 5. But now that I'm doing my own studies and working, I'm like, I said, how did this thing work? And it's not like you were, I guess, taking it one day. Like you had lots of responsibilities in your work, also studying, which I'm assuming you were looking at some form of future. And then on the side as well, there's babies happening. So after my second brother, the last born was born, and he is 2 years younger than me.
Sheesh.
So I'm like, how?
Sheesh.
How did you manage all of this stuff?
They had 2 kids who were under the age of 5
Yeah.
at the same time.
With me.
Yes.
So I was
bro.
like, hey, okay. I mean, at the time, obviously, you don't have the perspective. Only now, I'm like, I don't have a kid. And I'm like, I don't know how you balance all of this together. And in many ways, I think for me, not having experienced him snap at me, I was just like, yeah, funny story. Anyway, whenever I would think my dad is gonna discipline me, I thought I'm gonna die because I've never seen him in that disciplinary. I'm gonna. So anyway, all that to say, he's handled a lot of things with a lot of grace, and I think I've seen that lens and view of leadership, and I'm like, yeah, that's dope. That's what I want to.
Bro, would you say, I mean, speaking about your heritage and the family from both sides, would you say that like present fathers is a big thing in Zimbabwe?
I was thinking the same thing because I'm if I'm reflecting on what I'm gonna answer, I'm like, is it a South African thing?
Is it?
Yeah.
It's hard, eh?
And in fact, not even just Zim.
Yeah.
It's very rare where I meet dudes from the rest of the continent who don't have dads.
Yeah.
You know, a friend of mine who's South African lived in Zambia a while back. I was there for a couple of years. And then when I just thought of some dudes that were in his life, I'm like, yeah, man, like I think, if I'm not mistaken, at least a good number of them, their dads were still present, grandfathers were still there. And I was like, man, is this absent thing just like, you know, the more south you go, the more rubbish.
They coach from.
I don't know, man. It's difficult to say because this is all I've known. Right? So on a personal level, this is what I've seen. And there's many representations of this in my view. So I don't have to look far. Actually, I have to look further out to find the absence of it.
Further out in your community or family?
Let's say family. But even still...
And like boarding school, I mean, do you still had guys who... like?
So boarding school is slightly different. You did have a few of, I guess, absent fathers. But again, not... let me put it this way. It's not until I came to SA and started hearing people's stories that I realized, oh, shucks. I think this is actually more of an anomaly here than it is back home. Now, I don't know whether I could quantify that with data in terms of... Because this is anecdotal. This is what I experienced versus what's happening. So, I can't answer that question.
Simba, just for the sake of myself in this podcast, can you not use stuff like anecdotal for this episode? Because
how many degrees do you have?
Many.
Just one.
Just one.
Yeah.
One and a half.
Wow.
And you have a certificate.
No, it's fine. And use simple English.
Okay.
This man is playing. You must see his office. He's being a client.
No, I've heard him do speeches. There's big words there.
Dope, man. Gobs, for you, bro.
Yeah, I think, opposite of that.
Yeah.
I think at some point my parents were engaged to be married. So my older brother and myself, so we share both parents. So at some point they were engaged to be married, and then things didn't work out. So I think for as long as I can remember, my father was not in the picture. For as long as I can remember, and maybe because we grew up poor, like for me, the concept of a dad was somebody who provided money, not so much the coach who's gonna walk you through life.
Yeah.
And even with that, he wasn't necessarily financially present because times were tough at home. He was staying in town. I grew up in the rural area. I think the closest thing to a father figure was his own dad. So we would after school go from my mom's house to my father's house. So his parents stayed in the village. So I think.
Were you close with your grandfather?
Yeah. Yes. I think so.
Were you named after him?
Was it?
Were you named after him?
No, I wasn't named after him. I was named after my great-grandfather on my
Mother's side.
Okay. He is David, his middle name, but I don't think it was. It was from my father's side of the family, my mother's side of the family. Yeah, so I think he was there, but he was like a harsh disciplinarian guy. You didn't mess with him. People were scared of him. I think the fondest memory I have was building a piece of furniture with him. And
a granddad?
Yeah.
Dope.
Because he was your handy guy, knew how to make things happen. Yeah, so I'll always remember that, him being present. Then later on, that's the only
father figure you sort of had.
Yeah. Okay.
So, yeah.
And then when did your dad bounce?
He never bounced. He was never there. The fathers are there.
You couldn't say
and then they
still
leave.
here.
No. I don't remember him being there.
Yeah.
At some point, I think my mother, you know how elders train kids to, I'll call you Uncle Black so that the kids call you Uncle Black. So I still remember our grandmother from my father's side sitting us down and telling us to start calling him Papa, which was very weird because for as long as I can remember, we weren't malicious, but we called him Uncle.
Your dad?
Yes.
Hectic.
Uncle so and so. So, yeah. I knew that he's my father, but I think we were trained to call him Uncle, and then retrained to call him
Papa.
Father. I did stay with him for a year.
Okay.
So when I moved from the village at about age 13, I stayed with my uncle on my father's side for a year. So he was kind of playing the father role, but he was still young as well. So yeah, he might watch this podcast. He was young.
You're gonna leave it at
that. No, he was young, and he had money, and he taught me life.
Perfect combo.
I appreciate him because he provided. So I think at some point I remember my brother and I taking our dad to maintenance court because I was like, no man, you gotta make something happen here. So this is now 2001. Moved to the hood, got Tabani, stayed with my Rangwani, my uncle from my father's side. 2001 stayed with my uncle, and then 2002 I stayed with my
dad,
my father. Dad is such a
weird phrase, bro.
Weird
word, rather.
Yeah, my father, and my biological father.
Hectic.
Papaka.
No.
So for you, those two are different.
When you say dad, man, there's such affection to to that word, and it assumes a relationship, like a very intimate relationship. So that's not how I would
Refer to him.
refer to
So
him.
you're saying father is by virtue of giving life, dad
Yeah.
is by choice of being in life.
Yeah, like dad is daddy. I'm in trouble.
Like you earned that title.
Yeah.
Hectic. Okay.
Yeah, so I think in that year, he wasn't also available really, but I feel like that's dad used to go to the tavern after work, or sometimes he was working in mines, not mines. What do you call it? Refinery. So he would work weird shift. So sometimes it was just logistically he can't be there, or if he's there, he's sleeping because he's got night shift.
Sheesh.
So just
hectic,
to
okay.
be gracious on that,
Yeah.
on that front, like that was my engagement with dad. Like dad wasn't really there.
Where did you go after that year?
I left the house. So yeah, had a suitcase.
I didn't want to say it sounds like you were
I'm the one who
very
left my
definite and
dad.
determined. You left. Yeah.
No. Some fathers leave, but
And the son
You're like,
I'm out of this. Yeah, no, it was 2002.
Why did you leave?
yeah.
I think, and this is now in retrospect, late, like when I think about belonging, I think, like I didn't feel like I belonged.
Yeah.
I felt like I was more of a nuisance and disturbing the family structure at that. My sisters might watch this, so let me just
Leave it
for
Be
their
sensitive,
sake, be sensitive to that because I love them. So I decided that year. So I was staying with my older brother. 2002, halfway through the year, I think about March, in fact, they chucked him out. To this day, I don't understand the reasons behind that. So he then moved to Pokeng, which is close by, with my mother's side of the family. And then I was just alone. I just felt like if they chucked my brother, I chose to stay because it was nice because we were living in the burbs. What am I gonna say at school? I was staying in the nice suburb. Now I moved to Phuket. What is this? So I'm gonna stay here.
Yeah.
But then after some time, I realized actually I wanna stay in a place.
You did
where
it for
I
the
belong.
gram, bro.
Yeah, man. Stuff, geezers and like living in the burbs. I'll go bath in about Vascom just so that
can
I
get
can feel like I'm
belonging.
home. So I left. Come Jan, I didn't come back to the house. They didn't even call to say, hey, when are you coming back?
What's happening?
I think they could smell that man is gone. And I think things were awkward because at that stage, I still had a good relationship with my father's side of the family, my grandmother and grandfather.
Yeah.
So during the holidays, when we go back to the village, I would still visit there. So the one time he's there, and it's like, the last time I saw you, I was staying with you. I left, and we haven't had the conversation. It's awkward. But I don't know. In black culture, there's no such thing as
awkwardness.
awkward. We're like, we know what's happening, but we're not gonna have.
We don't have to discuss it. We know what's up.
So that's the.
We do awkward well, but to the detriment of many people, man.
Yeah, man. Yeah, wow, that's powerful. You sometimes say, with wisely. So it was.
But I was thinking about it even now, you holding back. One could say, oh, look at the dynamics of the black family. It could be so complicated. You can't even speak fully. Blah, blah, blah. But I'm like, no, I think that just happens in all cultures. But part of what being a man is, and I shared this with you guys before we started recording, is growing and understanding that, holding back certain things, like now in this case, holding back your tongue, but exercising a level of self-control is one of the manliest attributes that anyone can have. Right?
Are you saying you look up to me as a man?
Baraka,
You can say that.
yeah, I need you.
He couldn't say it the other day. He wanted me on the podcast, and like he was telling it to you. I'm like, dude, if you just said like,
I need you.
I'm gonna show up.
Yeah.
And then he was like, but we're not gonna go there. I'm not gonna expose his response.
You're holding your tongue.
Hold your tongue, Papa. Nah, I hear you, bro. Maybe to share mine, and I think obviously I've had, since we started this podcast, kind of hinted at my relationship with my dad and how I grew up. And I think if you go back to our trauma and healing episode, part 2, I kind of got into the thick of things there a little bit and in depth compared to other times I've shared. But, you might be new to this. So I grew up with my dad. First 15 years of my life, he was present. He was there. And I hear you and I agree with you. Calling somebody dad is a term of endearment, term that I think somebody has to earn by, just being there, loving, caring, being what a dad is. Because I think affection is not just guaranteed because I'm your kid or I'm in a relationship with you. I think affection is something we invest in and it grows, in any relationship. But I tend to use that word just generically.
Dead.
Yeah. I hated I hate that term being used for me as a father.
Why is that?
I just feel like that, and no offense, because I know you call your pops dad. I find it sticky and slimy, man.
Sticky and slimy.
Why?
And it's probably just how, it's growing up in a sexualized culture. Call me Zadzi.
Wow.
Call me.
Wow. That's a short left. Yeah.
No.
I just found that thing very slimy, bro. And I remember thinking, I've never, even when my dad was still with me, I never called him dad.
Yeah.
Ever.
Okay.
I think it's not just because I feel like the word is sexualized.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not everyone, obviously, because most people do call their fathers daddy or dad, right? But, so I think that's one for me.
I have my reason why I don't like the word dad.
Yeah. But secondly, I thought it was lame. I just thought the word is lame, So anyone who's like, "Oh, daddy," I'm like, "He's such a lame." But I was a kid, so please don't think I think you're a lame now. I've grown up and I've reasoned with it. But as a kid, I just thought, nah, son, that's not cool. That's whack. I called my dad Papa first, and then when I was probably like 9, when my sister was born. My sister was born when I was 9. I started thinking, I can't call my dad Papa. And my sister's going to call him Papa as well. That's also lame.
Yeah.
So this wasn't a schedule, but whenever I got some creativity, the term would change. So it went from Pabzo to Pabzin, Pabzaza.
Wow. Papsak.
That's a perfect metaphor for where our relationship is. So anyway, but I use that term dad generic. So even in this conversation, I don't. It doesn't have any terms of.
I think for me it was just too English.
So that was your reason.
Yeah, no. There I say too white, where I felt, and excuse my racist stuff. Like when my kids call me that, I just, it feels weak. It feels like you're not who you are. Like that's not how we should speak.
To our fathers.
Yeah.
So
like
what do your kids call you that makes you feel?
No, they call me Papa. Which again, I'm not sure if it's even Twana, because I think it comes from somewhere else. But that's how I grew up calling. The generation before me would use Ndate. My wife still calls her dad Ndate. So I think that's cool.
Yeah.
But it's just not in my vocab. But it was I always associated with private school kids
Yes.
who are
That's
trying to be too nice for life and daddy. I'm like,
That's interesting.
Daddy sounds like a guy who is finessed to basically succumb to the children's demands.
Wishes.
Yes.
Daddy is
That's what it feels
how
like.
every American sitcom portrays the father.
That's interesting.
The American sitcom, the father is always the clown. He never has a sense of control of his family. He's always been made fun of, and it always seems like he's the extra, right? In the thing. That's why I think My Wife and Kids was radical. So a show like My Wife and Kids, who were black, and the dude was there. He took a center stage in terms of his character. All of that to say, I think even in this conversation, just if we analyze the word dad and how we feel about it, obviously you.
I was about to say, for me, actually calling him dad was our endearment. Like,
yeah.
for me, it was.
hundreds.
Yeah.
No, I'm not gonna bring that to the internet. Let's leave it.
What's the Shona word
Baba.
for? And would people generally use that?
For me, which was the part I wasn't gonna bring to the internet, but whatever.
But Simba's a private school kid.
Yeah. You the kind of guys that
Sure, but I don't think.
in high school.
Remember, and that's what I find interesting is.
Sorry, before you say, I wanted to say it's interesting how we speak about the term dad, and there might be people who watching this and thinking, that's part of the problem with what today's idea of masculinity is. Here we're using very strong terms to, try and understand the term of endearment. Like, how could you even bring things like being called a dad makes you feel weak, right? That's part of the problem with the thing. But I'm like, I think that's not an indication that there's a problem. I think it's an indication of what masculinity is. Right? And that's a bigger conversation that we should be having. That I think part of what masculinity is, or even femininity, has a very clear, objective understanding. And I think once those objective understandings are taken away from masculinity, particularly in this case, then we end up with considering a phrase like you just used, problematic, which I don't think is problematic.
Yeah.
Anyway, but
but those are David issues, not like that's a David issue. Like.
Yeah, but I also thought it was lame.
Yeah.
I thought, even now, I don't want to be called dad. Anyway,
That's interesting
but we could
because
get it,
for me, dad was actually a stronger form. I used to call him daddy. Well, obviously in a
young.
Shona, so we had a derivative which was daddy, not daddy. Daddy. Yeah. So that's what I used to call him. But as I grew up, I was like, I feel like I'm closer to you than some of the terms that would be used. And I want to call you dad.
Yeah.
So when you are talking about it this way, I'm like, that's very interesting. We are sitting on totally different sides of the aisle. And that's why something like Baba felt like, to me, it's very distant. And even though in my culture, that's actually the term for fatherhood.
Yes.
And even now, I'm trying to figure it out. I'm like, I wonder where that idea came from as a young child trying to figure it out. But I felt like dad is like, we chat, we're close, all of this. And I don't know whether that's because maybe you project a view of fatherhood, and this is a thought, so don't attack me if I could be wrong. But in certain African cultures, fatherhood is the idea that you just provide. And so maybe it was that connection. I don't know. I'm not too sure. I need to figure it out. But for me, dad is actually endearment. It's like there's all these other, dad is like you and me.
Yeah.
I would say probably not in your case, because you said earlier on that all you knew was your dad being present and your grandparents. So I think maybe you did call him dad because you felt like, yo man, it's my homie, we close. I'm only saying because I don't think at that point, considering what you said earlier on, you would have said and had a very critical way of thinking.
That's why I'm even thinking about the thing you talked about, My Wife and Kids.
Yeah.
I'm like, I never thought about it.
Yeah,
I genuinely didn't think, this is a radical idea.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, this
Yeah.
is what I live
Yeah,
every day.
hundreds.
Yeah.
And
Hundreds, bro.
even then, when you're now talking, and I'm like, oh, dang, actually, that's true.
Yeah.
Because in the portrayal of fathers in certain entertainment, whether it's series or cartoons, whatever,
Yeah.
that view is what was presented. It actually never had an effect on me because I never sat back and I was like, yeah, why are they portraying fathers like this? Because I'm like,
It's not
Yeah.
fun.
that's
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
my father.
Yeah.
Hundreds, bro.
And I don't see that in his fathers. So.
Yeah. Yeah.
The trendy people would say we need to normalize. We need to normalize black dads being present.
Yeah.
And to a point where it doesn't become radical, that like there's a portrayal of
A
of a
present
good
father.
African family.
Yeah.
That's, that's still
Sure.
like normal. That should be the norm.
Yeah. So yeah,
Did
maybe.
you share your experience though? Like
I mean,
your
it
story.
opened up.
Other things.
Since I'm your father, from my experience.
Yeah, man. And
Sure,
you-
Daddy.
Come on now.
I'm the
Come
father
on
here.
now.
This is my house.
Don't play with me, right? So anyway, I mean, yeah, grew up with him 15 years. At age 15, my parents separated. And if I'm being fair, I think they didn't separate. I think my dad left, right? And I think even moving forward, I said earlier on before we recorded, I think I'm coming. The more I speak about my dad and our experience in the publics, in the internet, I'm realizing that I think part of what is manhood and what is masculinity and how I'm supposed to be carrying myself as a man is not to unnecessarily speak ill of my dad,
Yeah.
even though our relationship is nowhere. But how do I balance speaking truthfully about what it is that I've experienced with him,
Yeah.
but at the same time, not to speak in a way that if he would ever come across this content, he would think, yes, Vele, I've always known that you're rubbish, and how
Yeah.
could you speak about your
Sure.
father like this in public, etc., right? So I think I'm learning to tread that line very carefully, and I can admit earlier on, whether it is the kid who's crying
Yeah.
and wants to voice out his pain,
Yeah.
man, there was no way that I would speak of my dad in any way that was positive.
Yeah.
right?
Sure.
Especially in public.
Yeah.
But to people who are close to me, I would be very open and actually speak about the first 15 years that were good, and then coupled with the past 20 years that I think are nowhere. Right?
So just to interject there, because
Yeah.
as you're speaking, I'm thinking of, I'm not just throwing in that I was reading this book, right?
Told.
Then he has a problem with words like anecdotal.
Hey.
But tell us
Yeah.
about the book, sir.
No, so the book is on like raising emotionally strong boys.
Yeah.
And as I'm reading through it, I'm like, yo, like I'm not an emotionally strong boy myself. So I felt like I'm parenting myself as I'm reading this thing.
Yeah, yeah.
But one of the things that it was talking about was taking healthy ownership of stuff in your life. And he mentioned that very often people are not emotionally strong. They either blame others for, like, let's say you didn't do well at school, so you blame, or you shame. It's like, flip, woe is me.
Yeah.
And I think very often for me, the reason why I spoke ill of my dad and just resonating with what you're saying was because at some point, like, you're not emotionally strong to own up to stuff that I'm messing up, and it's not because I grew up without a dad. So like
Primarily.
primarily,
Yes.
because it'll always be like. So the reason why I speak ill of him is that, like, I'm hurt, but I'm also figuring out life. Then I'm making mistakes. Then it's always like everything circles.
If you were here, this
I'm
mistake would
blaming him for that, and I think part of what's happening is that, like, we're maturing and we realize, life is challenging. It's complicated, and I guess in some ways you develop more grace and more ownership of your own thing. So I guess at least for me, that's what happened. Yeah.
I would even throw on the back of that I think part of what being a man is being emotionally intelligent. And I think for the longest time, dudes who tend to be more emotionally intelligent would pull back, especially when they're with other dudes, because that was looked at as a shameful thing, right? If you're a man and you're aware of your emotions. And then we'll start throwing terms like, you shouldn't be emotional or whatever. And I'm like, even that's an emotional statement. But I think in trying to understand and speak about what manhood looks like for us, for me, I would say, man, like being emotional intelligent is a very key attribute or aspect of that, and we should be growing more in that. Anyway,
Yeah, and I think circling back to the conversation, it's something that you ought to be learning from your dad in facing pressure, in facing like what you were saying, raising two children and still holding
school.
So you saw it modeled, you're more likely to
do the
to
same.
do that easier than us, but we're not at liberty to then say, I'm flipping with my kids because no one modeled that to me. So I'm
never
losing
saw it,
my cool and like,
My daughter says, and yesterday, I think it was yesterday, we're driving quite a lot. And, my wife would drop me off somewhere. She'd go off, come back, pick us up with my daughter. Then she'd leave with my daughter. Anyway, so there was a lot of movement yesterday.
Yeah.
Probably like 3 times, I'd be in a rush. And I'm like, yo, man, we need to get in the car. I'm trying to get my wife in the car. I'm trying to get her in. We're with Grace. Let's get Grace in. And 2 points or 3 points, my wife was talking to somebody else. So then I'm like, get in the car. And she's like, Babo, are we going to leave Mama? And I'm like, I'm not like my dad. I'm not leaving you, man.
Hey!
We're not leaving. I'm not leaving anybody. But I wasn't shouting.
Yeah.
I wasn't angry. I said it very jokingly to her because I think it was probably the 3rd time. Mama, are you gonna leave? Are you leaving, Mama? And I'm like, Zaya, I will never leave you, man. I'm not like my dad. I'm not leaving you guys.
Wow.
And I'm like, she's 4, bro. It means nothing to her. Yeah. She's just worried that we're rushing in the car. Yeah. Her mother's left behind. What's gonna happen, right? Anyway, but I'm like, if and that was just a very light, was a joke. I didn't, but I'm like, that could be our permanent posture.
Yeah.
Right. That anything that happens, whether you're married or not, but anything that happens in your marriage, in your family, with your kids, or at work, whatever, that would be your natural default, and the posture that you hold, that you would blame how your dad was not there. Right. And I'm like, yo, man, part of us again becoming men,
better husbands,
is moving from that. Right. Finding ways of how we can move away from that. So that it's not the primary thing that's constantly defining us. Anyway, I don't think I'll ever tell my story, but we're here. So I think the biggest thing in my life was that 15 pounds. And I've always felt like, going back to how we opened the episode, that my dad coached me for 15 years and then he left. And when I wanted to play the game, because I think the teenage stage for anyone is a very vital stage, right? Confusing stage because you're not the baby anymore, but you're not yet an adult that we can trust you to do stuff, right? Which is also wild.
Do you think though? So I mean, you're gonna say something. Do you think which is the most? So I agree with you. It's very vital. I just felt like at different stages of my life, I needed a dad for different reasons.
Yes.
Earlier on, it was, emotional support, financial support for me was the biggest thing because, evidently, we didn't have money, didn't have clothes. You'd go to school. Casual day was the worst because you just don't have clothes, right?
Because uniform was like a leveler.
Everybody's okay. We normal here. Now you wear your innerwears every Friday. And then you wear that one T-shirt with your school trouser. And then after a while, it's like, no, I'll just pretend like I'm a rebel and wear
school uniform.
Yeah, we don't conform. Meanwhile, it's like, actually, there's no money to think. And here I am, I have a dad who's, I don't know, he's not providing. So at that stage, that's what I needed. then maybe teenage, somebody to guide you. But I feel like at that stage, I was already part of church and church community. So there were role models who sort of I looked up to. And then also in my 20s, meeting Christian men who like would allow us into their homes, where I feel like there was always a dad figure. Then come marriage and
Kids.
and you're like, yo, I need like what Simba is saying, if I'm stuck, somebody to just call. And I think, so I think for me, the reason why I called my son Wahile was almost to say, like, I mean, the name simply means God has built. God has established a new, and it has connotations of a family. God is not building a family. So it was almost like a feeling of, I don't need my dad anymore.
Sure.
I think right now I don't need to be parented because now I have to assume that role of parenting. But as I assume the role, I'm like, actually, I need a father now more than ever. Like,
Sure.
yeah.
No, I agree with you, bro. Totally agree. I think, different stages. And that's something that we're unaware of. You know? I've found myself crying for my dad at all those points. Right? All those points. I think, I was 27 in the shower. It's just bathing. It's a normal thing of it. Right? That Father's Day. This is not my dad's birthday. It's not my birthday. Just a random Tuesday.
Life is trapping.
Yeah, life is lifing.
Yeah.
I'm fine. And I think I thanked God that it happened in the shower because I didn't want my wife to hear first. So I didn't plan to go cry in the shower. I was just bathing, man.
Yeah.
And then I don't know what I was thinking about. And because I think a lot, bro, and I'm bathing. And I think probably a thought about my dad came. I bawled, bro. And I remember thinking at that point, Jesse, I thought this thing is gone, man. I thought like I'm getting older. This thing is out.
Yeah.
Right? I don't have to deal with it. But that experience alone, I remember telling David, and I'm like, I'm fine. It's at that point I sobered up to the truth that this is going to be here forever.
Yeah.
Right? It's going to be there forever.
Yeah.
Yesterday, I was listening to jazz music.
Yeah, sorry.
Cried.
Yeah.
I'm like, my wife is there, my daughter's there, Grace is there. I'm by the couch. I'm listening to all the songs that my dad used to play. Right? We drive from Vosloo. We still have relatives in Vosloo, and I lived in Tembisa. And so when there's no traffic driving at night, it's probably like a good 30, 35, 40 minutes if we're really cruising. My dad would play all this jazz, bro. I'd be in the back. And I remember just dreaming, in those moments, looking out, it's dark.
Yeah.
There, my dad is there, he's my hero, I'm bonding with him. The music is listening to, I'm like, yo, man, that's the stuff I want to listen to. It's shaping me. I'm fine. Yesterday, I'm listening to the stuff. You like this, I'm fine.
And then they're like, what's wrong?
Yeah, I'm like, what's wrong with the light?
The echo.
I thought there was a hole in the ceiling. When I was working here last night, I thought there were. I was like, dang, bro. It's just going to be there, man.
Sure,
it's going to be there.
And I think it's harder for you because, I mean, if I listen to Simba's story, that's a deep connection that you have there. The first 15 years, that's a deep connection you have.
Hella, bro.
Something died there. Whereas for some of us, like it's like there was always a longing, but there was never a point where like you wanting something that existed because it's like
Yes.
We've had to accept that this is the way of life. And granted, there were other people who didn't have fathers. So it's like, this is a lot in life.
Yeah.
So, like
and it's unique because it's not like he's past, he's there.
Yes.
I think that's what, for me, is like, the grieving is different. Because you're not grieving someone who's
bro,
dead.
and it's I've been grieving, bro. Yeah. Yeah. And that's the thing, though, where I'm like, and I always say, I wish my dad was a rubbish human. from age 1 till 15. Ne? And this is speaking out of hurt, purely out of hurt. I wish my dad was just a rubbish human, because then I would think, it's fine that he left fairly, because I couldn't deal with that. My dad was amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
Hella amazing.
Yeah.
Hella amazing, bro. Like, yeah. I'm like, from the way he disciplined us, the way he loved my mom, from the way he taught us how to interact with other people in community, you know. We're very religious looking back now, you know, obviously because of where I am with my faith. Looking back, I'm like, okay, we're just very moralistic, very religious, but taught me how to pray. We'd pray, you know, every night before we go to sleep. Being in a routine, my dad, he gave me timetables from when I was a kid, bro. Order your life. If you're going to grow up and be a man who runs his household well, becomes a great leader in society, you need to order your life, right? Lessons I got from him as a kid, bro. The love for music, you know, like literally just treating people with honor, with worth, with dignity, stuff I learned from him, practiced in front of me.
Yeah.
So he didn't just come home and speak about the stuff, but he lived it, right? And yeah, so he was just an incredible man, like, proper. And that's why, for me, it was a flip and a crazy experience, and maybe a trauma, that it was literal day and night, bro.
Yeah.
Right? Like, this was, like, every time I would think about him, and I'm like, nah, bro. Like, this other version of him after age 15, like, maybe something happened, bro.
Sure.
You know, maybe he had like an illness or something, whatever. I don't know, bro. Because there was just no way to justify the thing. There's just, even sitting here, I'm like, till today, and maybe because I've lived longer without him, which is 20 years.
Yeah.
Right? But I just cannot still fathom what really happened. And obviously some of the decisions that he made later on in life, then kind of gave me some ease to think, hey, maybe this is where he was heading, and some of this thinking now had informed him earlier on, and that's why he had to switch. And because of the kind of dude he was, I even said this to him at one point, where I'm like, I understand if you have issues with my mom, you know, you guys were together before I was there, and yo, man, I'm married now, and I know relationships are complicated. I get that. But I said to him, I don't understand why it felt like when you separated from my mom, you separated from me. When you divorced my mom, you divorced me. You know, and I was like, that I couldn't get, bro.
Can't reconcile.
And I'm like, again, you know, this is speaking from hurt. Where I'm like, I know dudes, bro, that I grew up with, and people that were in my community, in my life, where I'm like, these kids were rubbish kids, bro. Right? And sure, maybe because they had their own scars, they didn't have a stable family, whatever. But as a kid, thinking, what the hell did I do to this guy, dog? Did my homework, cleaned the toilet, kept my routines. You know, so if which my dad never made me feel like I had to work for his love ever, right? And I think I've had a sense and an awareness of my emotional intelligence. 100% got it from that guy, and I've never felt like I had to work for his love ever. But in a place of hurt, then you start thinking, maybe I should have worked. Maybe I should, you know. What did I do, though? I got good marks, you know, didn't disrespect anybody. When he disciplined me, my dad would literally iron out my crimes, negotiate with me, speak to me and reason with me, right? This is what you did. Why did you do this? And explain, okay, do you think this is right? No, it's not right. Therefore, what punishment do you think you deserve, right? So even as a kid, that was helpful, because then I'm like, clearly there's consequences in the world.
Every
I can't
choice
just
is a consequence.
or live willy-nilly or whatever. So I couldn't reason, bro. I'm like, this dude was very reasonable, logical, very rational, but this is not rational, though. That's one thing I still couldn't reconcile, bro. And I'm like, for the longest time, I lived from that hurt and that scar. And it's only now, I think, that I have a kid that I'm like, yo, man, I can't permanently live from that. I can't live from that, but I have to kind of move away from that. It's going to be there, but I need to find healthier ways of how I deal with that. And he's the only dude who can give me answers. Can't get these answers from my mom. I can't get these answers from anyone else. He has to sit with me, and that's what makes it also hard because he's not dead. He's there, right? I know where he lives. I know his address, right? So anyway.
But now that we're there, right? Because we've all shared our experiences of fatherhood, as sons.
Yeah.
I'm not a father yet.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering, for you, with your unique experiences, what does fatherhood look like now as a father when you say, okay, cool, this is the life I would have desired to have or had at some stage? How does that now inform your fathering today?
And before we answer that, sorry, bro, I feel like in most conversations, and particularly this one, because I'm so invested, and I've been for a while, when it comes to fatherhood, I think the dominant voices are David's voice and my voice, people with broken stories. We never get to hear dudes that come from families or relationships. No. Even in this conversation, I'm like, for the past 15 minutes or whatever, it's just been me and Kobedi, And I feel like part of what brings healing and change in the narrative is hearing from dudes like you, right? Whose dads are still present, who grew up with dads who cared, loved them, shepherded them, imperfectly so, but were there, right? And I'm like, maybe to even answer your question first, right? So that we kind of, because I feel like, yo, man, that's one is inspiring because the receipts are there, but the more voices like ours are loud, which I'm not saying that they shouldn't be present. They should be part of the conversation. But then we never kind of get to breaking the mold. I think part of healing is hearing how things are actually supposed to be.
Yeah.
Right?
Cool. No, okay, so I think what's interesting about my experience, I suppose, when I juxtapose it against yours, it's some of the emotions and experiences you're having can be had, but in a very different way. So, as an example, your desire for your father to be present, for me, at some stage when things were hectic, because he's working, he's coming, doing late nights, all of these things, something as simple as seeing my dad at a soccer match, was revolutionary, right? And again, that's why I'm like, it's so different. But when you look at it, the actual underlying emotion of a child is wanting the presence, right? So for me, the games my father came to watch, guys, I was happy. Like, this is it. This is amazing. The guy who I want to grow up to be like is actually here, watching me. And of course, here and there you want to score a goal. It never happens when he's there. Sometimes he's not there, but he was here. That was dope. So like I'm saying, that longing for, which is interesting, and some gents who aren't comfortable enough to say it won't say it. But I'm like, we all long for the same thing when it comes to your father. It just happens in different ways. So whereas your experience was wanting to have him more present in your life in general, I had certain inflection points and I'm like, I would like him to do this. And then now, when you have him doing those things, just your outlook on your passions, the things you want to do is completely different. So I'm actually only remembering this now. One of the things my dad did when he realized that I love music is he actually learned the guitar.
Wow.
So we would go, so I used to play drums at church in primary school. I mean, still do now. But in primary school, that's when my love for drums came to be. So I think I was actually about 10 when I got my first drum set, and then I started to learn. But it was one of those things that I didn't have it was an interest. And he had seen, or him and my mom had seen me banging the table with spoons and whatever. And they're like, oh, okay, he seems to like this. Let's steer him in that direction. But in many ways, it was like natural talent. Right? So anyway, that happens. And then Jiggy starts coming to band practice. And he's playing guitar, he's taking lessons for guitar. And we get to learn together. So for me, those were some of my fondest moments. is having and doing the things that I loved with him. And again, which is why I'm saying that desire is present. It just features itself in different ways. And we've had, through our relationship, different inflection points, right? So initially it's things that I'm enjoying, that I want to do with him. And then as I grow, I'm like, actually, he also has things that he likes. So maybe I should go and do the things that he likes, so we spend time together. And one of those things is golf. So when we play golf together, I'm like, well, it started off as I'm doing this because he wants to do it. Now I'm like, yeah, this thing is nice. It's cool. Right? So whenever we're playing, it's no longer like an interest, the interest episode with the wives. It's no, like, this is actually dope. But in many ways, again, I'm like, yeah, but to be quite frank, this became dope because you were doing it with your dad. So you've got this dynamic where the presence of him in my life has provided opportunity for us to do the things that I love. And in many ways, my presence in his life also has allowed us to lean into his talents and the way that he wants those to happen. It's a beautiful relationship and interplay in terms of just a father-son relationship between us. And that's interesting because even at that, then there is, it solidifies a trust in then saying, okay, what does this look like now in the context of one day when I am a father? What are the lessons I want to take? And many ways, us having conversations about the things that he would want to change about him fathering me. So I'm not here having, I suppose, I didn't have pieces where I'm like, I think you could have fathered me better, A, B, and C. But by him saying, hey, actually, if I could change a couple of things, and I think he mentioned it in that video that was played at church. I think we did that video together. Where he was saying, I wish I could have spent more time in the formative years. So for me...
This was the first time you heard him say it on...
I hadn't heard it before.
We did that video when again?
It was during the pandemic.
It was pre-COVID.
No, it was pre-COVID, just
there was
2018.
a time we interviewed him on a Zoom call. That's not, was it not?
Nah.
There was a Zoom call. So it was before.
Because the one you did pre-COVID was quite a short...
it was a short video clip, but they shot it. So but for me, I was like, oh. And then I reflect and I'm like, oh, actually, that does make sense because I would have wanted you to have you at more soccer. I would have wanted to have you present in other things. But I didn't lead, I suppose, with the absence because I had so many points of reference where I'm like, you've been present.
That's dope.
So, I think...
How has he shaped your marriage? Because, I remember at your wedding, me and my wife crying inside. And then we said it to him that, can you please adopt us? But my dad wasn't there at my wedding, and obviously that was a big thing. And then seeing your dad at your wedding, first I'm like, when? But then his speech, I'm like, dang it, bro.
Yeah, no.
This guy has...
I missed that wedding because I had COVID. What did he say?
Even just how he roped in your mom into his speech and his experience with her, bro. I think. I mean, it was your day, your dad's speech.
He was a true African dad because it's not really your day.
No, but he didn't do it in the typical African dad fashion where it's like,
I raised this guy.
Puza me. Nah, bro. But it was just like, just reflecting on his own marriage. I think he spoke a bit about his family, if I'm not mistaken. And there was some stuff that happened, and I'm not gonna share because it's your stuff. But something that happened with, I think, his dad, and then how that affected him, and how that informed how he then moved in marriage, and therefore how he fathered, and then the hopes he has for Simba, And, so literally just felt like the moment where he's passing
Speaking the baton. Wow, man,
bro,
that is powerful.
where it's like,
Yeah.
and for me, part of what hit me the most, because I've been waiting for that. And when, again, my dad leaving at 15, part of the dreams I had was that moment where I'm like, yo, man, when I finish matric, when I graduate, when I get married, when I have a kid, like the stuff that I'm willing, like not even willing, but I was dreaming and hoping that I would tell my dad. Because I'm like, now as a parent, I know, being in the thick of things, I'm just trying to keep this kid alive, right?
Yeah.
She's interpreting me differently, and there might be things that I'm doing that later on in life she'll say, yo, dog, like when you did A, B, and C, I appreciated that. And I'd only be aware then. And so I was writing all these receipts, bro,
Yeah.
waiting for the day where I could say to my dad, yo, man, like, this, look at what you've done, right? So that moment for me, personally, obviously at that level, hit me there. But even if I remove my own story, I was like, this guy needs to adopt me, man.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
I am ready. I was ready to, whatever Home Affairs thing has, where you can fill out, I want to be adopted. I was ready to sign that thing, bro.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Was there a question? Because
The question was, so obviously how he then passed on the baton.
Yeah.
How has that shaped you and how you move now?
My man.
Yes, you're not
I
a
want to
father.
run with it in comment. Baton. Run with it.
Sure.
In relation, because I mean he's gonna answer, but
Yeah,
just
yeah,
because I mean
yeah.
we've walked the path, since
Together.
you been married, like that. That's powerful. Like the passing on of a baton, where you've observed a relationship that works over years. Because I was thinking, as you talking about your dad being present, one of the things that dads instill is a sense of confidence. So I may be part of a B team soccer team, but like I know there's a dad who's cheering for me.
Yep.
And like
I'll be the best
team
team member.
Here.
Yeah.
I don't have to. Dad is here. I don't care if I'm part of the A team. So the sense of confidence, and I think that's what I envy about certain guys who grew up with that. There is a certain level of like, geez, like I can show up confident. But I think one of the things I've seen in you, particularly in marriage, was that sure anchor that all my life I've known relationships that last.
Yeah.
So you almost working from a place of strength to say when poop hits the fan, like all I've known is relationships that works. So I'm committed to this thing.
Yeah.
At least as I've observed you, that's how I would envision it shaping you. Like a sense of confidence, a sense of I'm gonna show up and fight for my marriage because that's like I know healthy relationships.
That's all I know, bro.
That's all I know.
It's like the kid who comes from a wealthy family. So it's like all I know is how to handle money.
Yeah. So
I know that you can lose money, but
Yeah.
I know a reality of where we win more than a reality of losing. Right?
And I think that's what's interesting about conversations like these, because it's something that I can agree with in terms of what you're saying, but it's not something I sit down and think of. Like, oh yeah, I come from a rich heritage
You're a
of
rich kid.
relationships that work. And in many ways, when you then get into a relationship and relationship, you know? I'm like,
relationshiping.
did my parents have this?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then I'm like, yeah, but they must have.
Yeah.
So there's nothing unique about this thing. And it becomes just and again, this is all at a very subconscious level, because it's not like something I sit down and think about. I'm like, oh yeah, okay, well, if they've gone through it, they're still together, then the question is, how do I go through it? And how do I stay? And I think that that's probably a big thing. Subconscious up until now, but now actually becoming an even stronger anchor for me is realizing and recognizing that because of how I've seen my father love my mother, that becomes an anchor. And in as far as, because there's probably lots of things I don't know about that have happened between them, right? Where his hands aren't clean, her hands aren't clean, whatever it is. But what I have is a receipt to say, from my birth until now, you're still together.
Yeah.
Yep.
And so whatever the stuff has been, which I'm sure there's deep things, there's shallow things, there's whatever.
Yeah.
But you're still together today.
Yeah.
Becomes an informing guide or guide rather for me to be like, yeah. So things happen in relationships, in my relationship with my wife, but we are following this path and we will go towards that path.
Yeah.
So I think for me that has been one thing in terms of my marriage. The second, which again I'm starting to see just that mold in terms of the heritage that I am blessed to have, is again in terms of even the advice he gave me when I started dating. He's like, oh, okay, cool. So you like this girl, all right? Cool. She sounds amazing. That's great. Have you guys fought? Like, how do you guys fight?
Yes. Wow.
And I'm like, I don't quite know yet. He's like, yeah, you might want to have a few of those. Just to help you guys.
Yeah.
Not saying leave, just have a few, get to know each other.
Yeah.
Get to know the real each other. Right? Because that's going to help you. So I suppose when some of those things happen, because I've been sort of forewarned, hey, this is not a sitcom. There's going to be stuff.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, okay, this is why you're saying we should fight. Okay, cool. And having that confidence that like this is not unique to me. This is stuff that's happened before in terms of the people I look up to, is helpful, right? And then it informs how we navigate, I think, the difficult stuff.
Yeah.
Then on the third part, which for me was big, is seeing him being intentional about being with my mom. So they if he's going in certain cases where he's able to, if he's going for a business trip and he can take my mom with, then they go together. Even in my formative years, seeing them travel together and me then staying with the grandparents and they taking me to school, I'm like, oh, okay. So you can create time for just the relationship. Where you guys get to bond, connect, and then, things keep running.
Sure.
But then even collectively now, when you bring the whole family in, having very distinct time apart from the world where it's family time. And I think that's been a big ritual or tradition that we have, is to try and set aside time as a family to be together collectively, which is something my wife and I have brought in and are now doing even with them. So we come together as both of our families and just enjoy time together because you need to connect. But what I didn't recognize and realize was happening is when you're taken out of the noise, so location, when you're then taken out of the noise and you're with each other, you begin to cement those bonds a lot more, which then prepares you for whatever noise or mess can be thrown out when you get back into the normal swing of things. And again, you will still fight even though you're on holiday. Holidays don't mean you don't fight, but you realize that actually we need to be together here, and this is the way that we will be. So I think those are some of the biggest lessons I would take in terms of marriage, but also at a broader level, family.
And so I know you said some of the stuff happens at a subconscious level. Do you ever consciously think about your brothers and how the legacy your dad has left, the baton is passed on to you, and how you handling that responsibility before your brothers, and I say this, we both have sisters, you have brothers as well. And earlier on, you held your tongue for the sake of your sisters. But I'm very conscious of how I treat my wife and my daughter, especially to my sisters. Spend a lot of time with my younger sister, the youngest out of us three. And I'm very intentional with her, So, and I actually say, this is why I'm making this decision. And explain it to her. And I remember this one time I said to her, listen, I want you to use me as, which is pressure, it's fine, but I want you to use me as a standard of how you're supposed to be loved based on how you see me treat my wife. And I'm not going to hide stuff from you, but I don't want you to have a naive view of the world or even be duped and be deceived by a dude because you're looking for love or whatever. And again, having to define yourself from the point of our father leaving. I don't want you to get there. And so I'm going to try and consciously love my family before you. Again, so I think you have a better example than I did.
Yeah.
So how much of that plays for you with your brothers?
Yeah, man. So I think it's interesting, particularly because I suppose you and me are firstborns,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
I don't know. I know Mkume.
Undwana, son.
Yeah, I'm not gonna say anything.
But also by virtue,
wait.
yeah.
Yes.
Godman la.
Fruit man. And he's dressed like a fruit man.
Don't play with me.
Yeah.
Boy.
So
This is real wisdom.
real white hairs.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think with my brothers, we've got a dope relationship. Again, owing to some of these things that whether they did it knowing or not knowing, when we're away on holiday as a family, these are the people I'm talking to.
Yeah.
And they've also got a comfort level of speaking to me about certain things. Which is interesting because obviously we've got this massive age gap. Well, not massive, but there's an age gap. So there's certain things my brothers are gonna go through that I'm like, I'm closer to the experience than my parents are.
Yeah.
And also I'm from your generation, so I somewhat understand what meaning this has attached to it. So finding myself having conversations with them about even some of the regrets I had.
Sure.
Right? Growing up, I'm like, look, don't do as I did. I think you want to change this in terms of your view, and seeing them take that on, in some cases challenge that as well and be like, well, I mean, that was your experience. And I'm like, yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Go ahead, go for it. If you want to do it, go do it. We'll have a conversation around that whenever the opportunities or issues arise, if they do, right?
Yeah.
So around how we do brotherhood, I think is, again, that same level of openness and presence to be like, and again, particularly because I've been able to be real and honest with my dad, that I am able to be real and honest with my brothers, and they can in turn do that with me as well.
Dope.
So it's just that feeling of whatever's happening, whether it's an exam or whether it's school pressures, whatever, we can talk about it. Like,
Do you talk to your dad about pornography? So I'm just trying to gauge when, when you say you're real, like what do you, in terms of the challenges that real men struggle with, the challenges that real husbands struggle with. So, and I'm speaking from like just my conception of African dads. Even those who are progressive, there's still a level of, when I say African, I don't know other cultures how they engage with
those
with
elders.
deep issues. Like there's a certain level at which elders are your elders, man. We friends, but we
at the level of
like are you able to talk about something like pornography? So like if it is an issue for men, like is that an open conversation?
So me and my dad,
I
don't think we've had the porn conversation. We've definitely had my sexual experiences conversation.
Sheesh. And how did you leave out porn from that conversation?
No,
that was part of your experience.
No, so that was me. So that was my thing where, hey, I'm trying to think how to phrase it for the internets. I'm trying to think.
One of the things I'm like, when my wife is not here, I feel like I'm censoring a lot. Like, I need freedom. I needed to be here to say, everything is
Like you said
open
before,
case. I'm like, what am I
when
saying?
you're alone, you're a dead star.
Yeah, no.
With your wife, you're a shining
I'm
star.
a shining star.
So let me put it this way.
Yes.
Let me put it this way. We had a conversation,
Yeah.
and it was actually with my mom as well, around just my history at a specific time.
Yes.
They had a body count conversation.
Yeah.
So I'm leaving it very generic because it wasn't just sexual experience. It was a whole bunch of other things that were happening, right? So in that, and this is probably why when we talk about certain things on the podcast, I'm like, we can talk about it if we haven't actually double clicked on it.
Yeah.
Because I was vulnerable and honest around what was happening at that time. So I don't think we've had like a targeted, this is what you do when you're struggling with it. No. That's not the type of conversation that we're having. But more than anything, knowing that if I wanted to, and if he watches this, he wants to have a conversation, we can have it. Like, I'm not going to be there sweating and wanting to mop the ocean. I'm just like, so this is what happened and this is the situation, etc. So I can't say we've had like a targeted conversation on pornography, but we have discussed those issues.
Yeah.
We did.
You had a
Birds and the Bees.
Yeah. As part of, I think,
Bears in the Bees or like
everything. My dad gave me, and this was like early 2000s, when the internet was very slow. So I knew that was a labor of like serious love when he came home with a folder full of,
was it STI?
yeah. So it was a folder full of information around STIs and STDs. And it's like early 2000s, bro. It's probably like, I'm in grade 6 or something.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I wasn't shocked. Obviously, like, as a boy, I've had conversations about sex with other boys or whatever, and living in the hood. But yeah, I played as though I didn't know what some of the stuff is.
I've seen that before.
But I think my dad was very in tune that he knew I was playing and he didn't want to make the thing awkward.
Yeah.
But my task was to read, I think, a page of this thing, and then we'd chat about it every night when he'd come back. And then I remember him driving me to school, and he prompted me before the STI. So the STI thing came later, but before that was incidents with driving to school, and then he was like, "Yo, man, have you engaged in sex? Have you watched porn, whatever?" And obviously I said,
Where would you have access porn at that? Like books?
yeah, so in the hood, where to, and I mean,
Oh, the cassette. Oh.
yeah,
And
and
VCR. We didn't have.
and book
We had a
Playboy.
pure life.
Book Playboy. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he was like, "Yo, have you engaged? Have you seen stuff?" And I said no.
Yeah.
But I had seen stuff.
Yeah.
And then he was like, "Alright, cool. But maybe you've heard your friend say things." Again, I think he played it down just so that it's not embarrassing or awkward. And I was like, "Yeah, I think I have." So he said, "Alright, cool. I'll give you a week. Just go think about the thing and what your friends have said. Any question you have, come back, ask. We'll talk about it same time next week when I drive you to school." So it was like a Tuesday or something. So I knew, okay, it's back next week, Tuesday. So then, he drives me to school every day. So Wednesday, doesn't talk about the thing, it's fine. We put a pin in it. We'll check it out next week.
Yeah.
And I remember, yeah, chill, bro. But then the Monday, I was like, oh, what am I going to ask this guy? Without me implicating
Outing
myself.
yourself.
So I need to pretend like I don't know.
I want to be inquisitive.
And obviously now in hindsight, I could tell that he played it down. But
What grade did you say?
I think at that point I was in grade 4 because the STI thing came in grade 6, but we had the sex conversation in grade 4.
Grade 4 is
You were a year ahead than me because you went to Marabastad High.
Yes.
But
Yes, on top of our game.
because we're the same age, and then obviously, and yeah, they pushed me back because
No, the dome of it. It's okay.
nah. I spent 6 months in the hood because my parents didn't have money that year.
Oh, okay.
So I spent 6 months in the hood. And so when I went back to the whites were like, no, which was wrong. I got very pissed off at my parents, especially when I grew older. I was like, you were paying customers. You should have told those white people he can cope.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not like it was the first time I was in an environment with whiteys. I grew up, go crash.
Yeah.
Anyway, so I was in grade 4 at that point. So we had the conversation.
Sure.
But it was very informative. He was loving.
But
Was it so now, I mean,
yeah.
is it like not fear mongering, but is it like can we you talk
no,
about
but you asked porn because if it's sex talk, then yeah, sure. you
So
have
porn was
those
included?
conversations.
No, because I think I threw it there in the sense of
Intentionally.
because I'm like, is it to that level? So do you have a relationship where you can talk about things to that depth, like with an African father? Because like wrestling with this thing. I'm tend to be conservative. I'm reading a lot of literature on.
When a man says I read literature.
No, like
Not
Anecdotal is a bit.
not books. I read a lot of literature.
Maybe I should have rephrased it.
We're here now.
Some stuff I engage with, some stuff we talk about.
Even saying I engage.
Raising children, but also around so an era of the so-called purity culture in Christendom, and one of the things was talking about how in different cultures, even apart from Christianized cultures, but in very conservative cultures, they tend to speak about sex in a more like negative light. So it's it was always about like the dangers of impregnating a girl, catching STDs, but never about pleasure. And then you you married. It's like it's almost like you importing that whole negativity within to the marriage, where you're not free to just celebrate it as a means of pleasure. Anyway, I'm talking about.
I hear your question though.
things.
I hear your question
Yeah.
though. So for me, when we had the conversation, it wasn't fear mongering. I think he was trying to paint a good picture of what
Okay.
sex is,
Yeah.
and then saying this is what sex is not.
Yeah.
And I agree with you that I think a lot of us dudes don't get that conversation from our fathers, whether some were there or not.
Yeah.
And therefore then we enter marriage and treat sex particularly based on how we've experienced it ourselves. And then in marriage, it's supposed to be a pure and a good thing. But I think we carry a lot of negativity, having had played the game without any guidance.
Yeah, because the streets are saying, this thing is nice. These are the different ways you can experience it. And then these ones are saying,
No,
nah,
you
like
can
there's-
die.
Yeah, the dangers. And then you have, this is negative. There's things that are associated with pleasure.
Yeah.
But the positive is just keep it conservative.
Yeah,
When you get into marriage, and it's like, you don't have a positive posture towards it.
Which is interesting, I think, that you bring it up, is when on my side, I think maybe I haven't necessarily felt that vacuum because I've always known that the door's open if I have a question.
Sure.
Right?
Sure.
And I think I always link it back to that experience where, as I was being vulnerable, I expected a particularly... I thought I was going to be grounded for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
And they were like, oh, okay, cool.
Wow.
Okay. So is that how this is affecting this then?
Yeah.
They're like,
Simba, just tell us a story.
no, I'll tell you offline.
Nah, Here's the thing. I think we're speaking, man. Like,
I tell you
the one
offline.
time I was like, hey, Papa, I did 1, 2, 3. And it's like, yeah, okay.
And he gave you a hug.
Yeah, my son. Like, yeah, anyway, it's fine.
Offline.
Hey,
But
offline.
it was one of those situations where, as a teen, you're like,
Yeah.
was I a teen? No, I was in university.
Oh, for a particular story.
Yeah, so I've experienced things, and I'm like, ish. According to the letter of the law, I'm not supposed to have done this.
Yes.
According to my parents, they wouldn't want me doing this.
Yeah.
But I was vulnerable enough and free enough to be like,
Sure.
hey,
I
this
did
is
it,
what's
man.
up.
That's powerful.
Expecting to be reprimanded as opposed to being reprimanded, I was met with love. So I was like, oh, okay, cool. Now so there's no, in my mind, untouchable topic.
Sure.
Like, it's not even for the internet that I'm afraid to say this thing. I'm just like,
See, what you're saying is powerful, but still, I think the viewers must comment. They must comment.
Maybe.
And if we have how many comments on Simba must share what?
Yes.
What is
What
it?
that
What are we
conversation?
talking
If
about?
we get one comment.
What?
No.
Not one. Let's say 20
first of
comments.
all,
to say,
I'm not gonna be a half husband
Yeah.
without my wife's comment is the most important comment.
Okay.
Oh, so if your wife
if your
comments.
wife, I'll see.
And
if you
says she
comment
wants
that,
the story.
Babe, don't you? Yay!
give him the
Oh,
freedom
anyway,
to
it's fine.
share
I'll
the
tell her.
story,
I'll go talk to her
because it cannot
after
remain
this.
offline.
There's people who are hungry
Yeah.
for such positive
Like
lessons.
vulnerability and
Anyway, and maybe I mean
Okay, let me put it this way. Let me give you just a bit of it.
Go deeper.
Let me put it this way.
Papa Runa.
There's nothing I will ever be able to take out of this podcast that will be surprising to my parents.
Yeah, hundreds.
Yes.
Hundreds.
So whether it's in
Yeah.
the context of relationships, whether it's in the context of university life, whatever, there's nothing that I'm gonna say on this podcast that they're gonna be like, I had no idea that this existed.
Yeah.
Maybe we haven't necessarily had like an in-depth, lengthy conversation about it.
Yeah.
But there's nothing that I'm gonna say here that I'm like worried. I'm like, shh.
Yeah.
We need to have a family meeting before. I don't have that, and I think that's unique because we technically, I'm not seeing that as the norm, and I realized that because before I had that conversation, I lived under the understanding that I can't bring these things together. And in many ways, it was surprising how that solidified our relationship even more.
Stop, man.
So yeah, that's why I'm like.
When I grow up, I wanna be like them. My free kid. No, it's a positive picture, man, and I've always told you, bro. Your family has always inspired me, particularly your dad. And if I could be half the dude he is, man, right? Like, yo, man, I think I would have killed it in this fatherhood and husbanding game, because I think your old man is just next level. I didn't even know some of the stuff that you're sharing now and how he managed to balance school, family, work, and still come to a soccer game.
Yeah, no.
Fine, with 3 kids. I have 1, and I have to go to a Father's Day thing where we have to paint. And I'm like, I don't even know what meeting I have after this. I forgot to say goodbye to my wife. You know, I'm just living the half-husband life. Life, bro, right? So I'm just like, man, even hearing that just increases my admiration for him. And just to continue praying for him. I don't think he's a superhero. I don't think he did that, you know, in and of his own strength. But it's just dope, man, to say that there's pictures like that now, and our story is not just the only picture that's there. You know, so for me, that's dope, man.
Circling back to my question now.
Yeah,
guys
because
as
it's almost like as fathers. Are we talking more in the context of marriage or like
Yeah.
fathering? What was your question?
No, I was asking you.
Yeah.
I've obviously had my experience, and that's created expectations of how I will father when I become one.
Yeah.
You've had your experiences of fatherhood, whether it's the absence of it,
Yeah.
and then the presence of other alternative means where you see the family structure playing out.
Yeah.
How has that informed how you father, given
Yeah.
that, and I have to give you your flowers, that you're present fathers, how does that inform how you do fatherhood now, today,
Yeah.
with all of your previous experiences?
Yeah, giving us flowers. It almost feels like, yeah, we're present because what other options is there? And not in a negative way. It's like, like you're supposed to be present. Somebody said the other day that the adult version of yourself is what you wish your younger version would have interacted with. So like,
Would have been parented by.
yes,
Yes.
yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yes,
I don't know
yes.
how true that is, but I wish I had a dad like
Like you.
me. And I'm not blowing my horn. I'm just like, that's what the things I long for in a father
Are the things
is
that
what
you
I
work
seem
blessed.
to, like put in place the most, but also are the places where there's a bit of brokenness or over, what do you call it when you
Compensating.
overcompensating?
It's
Yeah,
the
I think-
literature I'm reading.
yeah. So I think most of our fatherhood is defined by what not to
you
be,
wish.
what not to
What
be,
not
and
to be, yeah.
what I wish I had. Not a lot. I think mainly within the church, that's where I saw positive roles of fathers who were there for their kids, who delve deep into knowing their heart. So that's been the perfect model. I think the absence of a father makes you always measure yourself against the low standard.
Sure.
Where it's
Hectic.
like, yeah, like sometimes you want to beat your chest and say, like, he's complaining. Why are you complaining? I'm here. Like, you should be thankful.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I think he's complaining because he wants me to raise the standard.
Sure.
Because his standard is
Sure.
a present father. So you ain't doing nothing by being here. Like, you're supposed
You've
to
been
be
here.
like, can you just up your game a bit? So just living in a space where, like, you always want to improve. It's much harder to improve when you think you are killing it.
Yo.
And killing it means doing the bare minimum of
What's
what you're
required?
supposed to do.
Sure.
Yo.
Sure.
When you define yourself by what you're not supposed to be, like you tend to, the low standard becomes an elevated standard, and there's no room for growing and being better, because you have to always be a better husband, always a
Yeah.
better father. So I think I don't know now. I lost my train of thought.
Your
Yeah,
train
no,
was
no.
good.
No, it was.
It was a
a
very
proper.
good train.
It was a Goud train. It wasn't metro rail. It was a very good train.
Yeah.
That's dope, bro. And obviously, I agree with you there. Having to not define yourself by what you're not. And I did that a lot in my early days of marriage. You know, I was trying to outdo my dad, or the version of him that left when I was 15. I was trying to outdo him, you know, be the best husband I can and not be like that. And then trying to measure myself against the version of him that was there from age 1 till 15, right? Which I thought were both stupid ways of living. There's good things that I should be taking away from the time he was present. And then I think the biggest lesson from when he left is that don't leave, right? Just stay there, choose my family, choose my my wife and my child. But like that's standard in one sense. But again, you know, in a land of blind men, the one-eyed man is king. You know, so in a country where there isn't a lot of fathers, being present makes you seem like a superhero, and it's like, nah, you're supposed to be there. You made this kid. You need to be there. Right? Imperfectly, sucky as it's gonna be, as hard as it's gonna be, etc., etc. Right? So for me, I've always tried to not live from those two versions. Don't try not do the good 15 years that I had with my dad. Because in my head, if I do that, then, you know, it will
Killing it.
Yeah, but in actual fact, I'm trying to heal myself, right? So if I outdo him, then I become the dad that I wanted, right? And I think somewhere in my brain, I believe that's going to heal me. And I'm like, that's not going to heal me. I'm actually using my wife and my kid as an experiment for my own healing when I'm supposed to be there presently for them, and not for some version that I want for myself, right? And again, not trying to live and compare myself to him when he left. So yeah, so for me, bro, I'm like, I think having to just be realistic about what it means to be a husband, and it is hard. It's hard to be a father. And even some of the versions that we saw in the church of dudes who are present, the thing I dig about them is that they weren't playing superheroes. They were very clear. Let's actually walk you through how this is going to be. I don't know if and I call him my father, Karen Feste watches my podcast, but he probably does, and we'll talk about it when I see him again. But I've always said in
Do
public.
you have a white father?
I have a white father, right? Yeah, hundreds. And I've always said this, and if you walk, you're probably going to...
Call him daddy.
Stop.
Papa. Sure, Papa.
I apologize.
You're probably going to stop watching our podcast. But I've said, and jokingly, but yeah, sure, it is what it is, you know. Then my black dad left me, and I got adopted by a bunch of white fathers, who have been great men and heroes to me, man, hundreds, right? And it's part of the thing, I think, that irks my biological dad, that I'm a Christian and I hang around white men, right? But that's another conversation for another day. It's fine. But even those dudes, they've never been superheroes. They've been very honest and clear. And Karen Feste, shout outs to him for living out what it means to be a father, to be a man, to be a husband before my very eyes. Right? I remember we were supposed to have marriage counseling with him. And the week before my wedding, or 2 weeks, we were like, yo, man, we haven't done this thing. So let's sit down and do some marriage prep. And I remember in that thing realizing, like this dude has been doing proper marriage prep with me because I was in his house. Right? So when he's frustrated with his family, they're frustrated with him, I'm there. I'm seeing all of the stuff. When he's, loving his wife, being friendly with his kids, I'm there, you know. I remember saying to my wife at some point, man, like, this is truly inspiring to see how he is with his kids, and this is how I want to be with our kids, right? And so that, for me, man, has always been the thing that made me say, okay, cool, I have my biological dad, those two versions of him, but here's a redeemed version, and I use those words very intentionally, right? By redeemed, I mean these are people who are sinners like me, sinners like my dad, but who are very aware of their own fallenness and their brokenness, and don't want to live and define themselves from that. But there's a clear hope and a positive vision of what family, fatherhood, manhood can look like, and that they're living towards that. Right?
Yeah.
And so for me, bro, yeah, that's what has, I think, changed the game for me, and has informed how I move now as a husband and a father. Imperfectly so again, but yeah, that's where I'm at now, man.
And I think that's from where I'm sitting. You gentlemen are doing that very well, because I have had the experience of seeing you before you were fathers, and then seeing you grow into your fatherhood roles, and just how that changed the approach of your family as a whole. Like, I mean, with you guys, I've come to your places, we spend time together, and this is not Simba and his wife are coming. It's like, after school, there's kids running around, there's a lot of things happening, and seeing that, and I'm like, sheesh, this is such a rich heritage that will be passed on in the community moving forward. And I think that's been one of the things that I'm like, sheesh, seeing and hearing your stories and then seeing how you have lived your lives in light of those stories is incredibly encouraging and motivating because it's like, it's not, this is possible regardless of where you've come from, right? And it requires effort, it requires deep thought, etc. On top of that, which is the second question now, is there's the dynamic of then you raising a boy and a girl. For you, both. For you, just a girl.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're doing it well
Yeah,
in the
gifted.
household. Yeah.
And I'm like, what does then that fatherhood look like? Noticing the differences between what we experience as men in life in general and the differences in what women experience in life in general, and knowing that you are raising someone who's doesn't share your same gender.
So it's quite intriguing because they two different genders, but they two different personalities as
Yeah.
well. So like trying to tailor it to meet them as people before they are male and female. Because there's certain things that I would have expected of my boy that I see more in my girl. Like just like climbing stuff, like being like an assertive little girl, versus my boy who's very so in touch with his emotions. And I'm like, yo, like this. If I was somebody who grew up where I grew, like back then, if I hadn't engaged with understanding that there's different personalities, I would say, this is just a wuss. Like he's just so weak. Like why are you like be a man, man? Like so that's been I feel more of a challenge than that they are different genders. Because on one level it's like, my daughter is such an assertive person. She's a girl though. Like I need to harness that assertiveness and that confidence. Part of it is just being there. Part of it is like pushing it a little bit, because there are times where assertive behavior can be borderline unhelpful. Maybe need to double click on that. But there's ways in which you can take it too far or like use it in an unhelpful way to be bossy or whatever. So just channeling that in a girl to say, like, you're both gentle and beast. Like, and I want you to be both. Like, I want you to be comfortable with wearing your princess dress, but still being
In a pose.
Yes, I'm afraid of that girl when she says no. And I'm like, I need to nurture that. Yes, I think with her, and that's what I came to realize, that I think I love them differently. The boy is like I'm proud of you, son. The other's like, I need to protect you, girl. So I fear my child going into varsity. I fear her being exposed to.
We're gonna
guys
build our
who
own
wanna-
varsity.
Yeah, I'm like, you're gonna stay home
She'll
until
come
you
to
are
our own
30
varsity,
something,
where I am
until I
the
find your husband.
you're the dean or chancellor.
Yeah, we'll be the lecturer, the dean of-
security.
yeah, everything. Because
We'll serve at the canteen.
yeah,
It's us.
because manhood in South Africa is broken to a point where, like, there's abuse, there's boys who want to get in her pants as she reaches a certain stage. And I work with students and I've seen them looking at girls and be like, dang, like I know there's gonna be a time when she develops curves and she's gonna look sexy. And I don't want to think of my little girl.
Yeah,
as
please,
like,
let's move
she's
on
sexy.
quick.
Yeah, like, and I'm like, so I'm worried, man, and I'm parenting from, love her so much that the standard is that she's not gonna be tossed around by some douchebag. And that is positive, but that can be crushing, because I'm like, sometimes I'm gonna yell at her and not get it right, and
Sure.
So that's parenting a girl is like a very protective love. parenting this boy now is like he's smart, man. He's emotionally intelligent, but emotional intelligence and gifting at this young age is difficult because
Yeah.
it's like he's all over the place. He's just,
Yeah.
I don't know what to do with you. I'm now starting to not regulate, which is what I'm supposed to teach him, how to regulate those emotions. But I'm like, I'm losing it. And just hoping like, yeah, I don't mess him up to become a ruthless human being.
Sure. Sure.
I think I'm navigating life as well as a man, and I'm like, flip, like there's a lot of people who take advantage of people who are kind-hearted, who tend to be not like A-type personality, like who are gonna like dominate others. So I'm grappling with that, and I'm almost have the temptation of breaking him to not be soft, and just to control myself and say God has made him to be this way, to be in touch with his feelings. Let's harness that and not try to prepare him for the so-called evil world. But at the same time, expose him to that life is not always. Yeah, it's broken. People are gonna disappoint you. Yeah, so I think personalities are a challenge for me rather than personalities as well as gender.
Okay.
And destroying expectations and dealing with the human who's in front of me and preparing them without being cynical about life. Like I don't wanna. So like it was June 16th the other day. Like, what are you gonna teach your wife about the history of South Africa and how to relate to white people, for instance?
Your kids or your wife?
The kids.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, yeah, like we tried hard to not have him think about racial categories. We've tried hard to say there are light-skinned people and dark-skinned people. And for him to form his own opinions about life without me imposing my whatever perception of reality. So yeah, I guess race is one thing, but sex is another thing. Relationships, money. Yeah, like apparently we're not supposed to instill in them what you call it, scarcity mentality. So when you're always saying, yeah, there's not enough money. And I think I grew up like that, man. Like it's like you gotta hoard what you have because who knows? You're not gonna have it. So I grew up in a poverty kind of environment, and being careful not to impose that onto him. I grew up without a dad. He just, especially my son, cannot comprehend that. How do I speak to him about that? I still haven't figured that out. And that's the thing. I think it's a journey of learning. I was at a Father's Day event and I was looking at some dads who were there, and I'm like, yeah, like it's nice to have this and we're building stuff together somewhere shining. But I'm like, the shine is in the everyday moments of life. Where he comes back from school and you need to dig deep into. Today somebody said something to you. Let's talk about it.
Package,
You're trying to tie your shoes, but it's frustrating. Well, we haven't figured that yet. Let's learn together. So I feel like fatherhood is in the small moments of life, in the small interactions that I have with my wife. Those are gonna build the big moments.
Still, bro.
Yeah.
That's dope. Yeah. Gents, we need to wrap this up.
You close off with your...
Nah, I think that was fair enough to close off on, bro. I think that was dope. My thing, to answer your question very shortly, I prayed for a girl. I wanted a girl. I grew up with my mom, who I've loved from day one. This is my hero till to this day. I have two sisters, grew up with all my aunts. Most of my cousins are females. My best friend was my wife, who's a female. So I prayed for my kid to be a girl, and I love it, and I think it's the most amazing thing. And she challenges me in many ways. I remember before she was born, people were like, because she's a girl, she's gonna have you wrapped around her little finger, and that thought was revolting because I'm a disciplinarian, and I was like, nah, it's not gonna happen, which hasn't happened, and I think she is a soldier because of who she comes from, but she's very aware of personalities and how she feels, So she's the kid at school. There was an incident at school where this one kid was basically bullying everybody. And so all the other kids were just like, all right, peace, bro. We're not playing with you. My daughter was the only one playing with her, right? Not because she was bullied or felt like she couldn't move or anything, but she just tends to be very perceptive when it comes to people and their emotions and how she can be kind and loving towards them. And so I remember me and my wife were struggling talking about this thing, because then my wife was like, oh, my kid is getting bullied. And I'm like, she's not getting bullied in the sense that she's staying there because she can't leave. Like, this is a Stockholm syndrome and she's fallen in love with a kidnapper. I'm like, that's not what's happening. She's waiting for permission from us, right? Because I think my daughter's, again, very kind, very perceptive when it comes to people. And she's very aware of the authority in her life, in her little mind. And so I said to my wife, until we give her permission not to play with this kid, because again, I think we reinforced to her that she needs to be kind and loving to people. And so we need to guide her through that, So what Kobedi was also saying about just his son's emotional intelligence and how he wants to harness that. So I'm like, we need to harness this thing in my daughter of her wanting to be there for people. And so part of it is giving her permissions, right? So like an app, right? Let's go into settings and say, what are the permissions that this app can thingy, and what are we not permitting it to do, right? And I think that was a light bulb as well for my wife. So when she came back home that day, my kid, then we were like, yo, man, we know what's been happening at school, right? All the other kids have left, and they probably left because they feel this person is not being nice to them. And I know you staying because you want to be nice to them. And in fact, her words was like, yeah, nobody wants to play with this kid, but I don't know why she doesn't want to, why she's being mean to me when I want to play with her. And so I was like, girl, if you don't want to play with her, right, from tomorrow, don't. If you feel like I don't want to be there, I'm giving you permission not to. And since then, she kind of navigates the thing, asked the teachers to kind of assess the thing. And so we've gotten feedback from the school as well that there's times where she's just like, all right, today, I don't have capacity to be nice, like, peace, bro. But other times she's like, all right, recharged, I'm here, let's play, because no one else is going to play with you. So it's been fun. It's been dope, man. It's been my biggest joy is seeing her personality develop in the kind of person I think she's gonna be, and with my weaknesses and whatever little foresight I have, how do I then try and shape her to be the person I think that she's gonna be? But obviously, I don't know that fully. It's again with the limited information I have with her, and just how I've seen life happen. So it's been fun. Again, it's one of those moments I wish my dad was around for me to be like, hey, dog, some of the things I'm doing, which is true, some of the stuff I'm doing in my parenting, I got from him in the first 15 years. It would have been dope to say, yo, son, I got this stuff from you, or I thought you did this and I'm trying to do this now. Is it true? Did you do it this way? And he could say, no, that's not what I was doing. You misinterpreted the thing. Or yes, you're doing it well, right? So anyway.
On Father's Day, do you say happy for the best 15 years?
For the longest time, and a lot of people did this, we said happy Father's Day to our single mothers. But I realized, man, that's unfair to my mom. Yeah, and it's probably also reminding her of a scar. You might think it's a cool thing, but it's probably aggravating scars that she has, right? So, bro. Yeah, so I hope one day, I hope one day I do reconcile with my dad. I do. Yeah. And that's where I'll end this conversation.
If he comes, he comes. I'm tired of pursuing.
No, I've stopped pursuing. I stopped pursuing before my daughter was born. And I told them that this is it, because I don't want my daughter to be born in this thing. But if somehow we reconcile, dope. But
It'll
I'm not
happen.
pursuing. Yeah.
Nonetheless, with all of that, I think kudos to you, gentlemen, for being present fathers.
Yeah.
Keep going.
Shut.
Can you just let me celebrate you? Is that fine, man? Yeah. Well done for doing what you're supposed to do.
This man has been celebrating a father all his life. He knows what celebrating a father is.
Yeah.
Allow him to do what he's been doing.
Maybe that's what we needed to do, and then they would have. Anyway. They would have stayed.
This man is hurt.
Papa, you want me to celebrate you?
We need to end this thing.
I was trying to leave it where I was.
Yes.
Keep going, gents.
Thanks, bro. And shout outs to you, man. And we can't wait to see what kind of dad you'll be.
By
Man.
this time next year, I
Yeah.
promise.
Sharabo Ska. Rendebo Kata.
Yes.
Sherebush.
Thanks, Grace.
Nangi is. I'm sure you are ready.
One day is one day, Buffett.
Anyway, still, man. 2.5. We'll see you guys. Peace out.